You heard Peter Doocy's piece there outlining a number of flip-flops on Medicare for All, which Senator Harris said she was for, and then she said she was against it. The question of Me Too issues was also a flip-flop there that was laid out in marijuana as well, in terms of how serious a crime that is. Can you give us some insight into what she might say to justify why she was for Medicare for All then and is not for it now, for example?
Well, there's a classic parlor game of trying to find a little bit of daylight between running mates. And if people want to play that game, we could look into why an evangelical Christian like Mike Pence wants to be on a ticket with the president caught with a porn star, or how he feels about the immigration policy that he called unconstitutional before he decided to team up with Donald Trump. If folks want to play that game, we could do it all night. But I think what most Americans want to hear about is, are our families going to be better protected than they have been by this president who's failed to secure America in the face of one of the most dangerous things ever to happen to our country?
So this is the upside of the primary being over, even though obviously one of the most conservative presidential nominees on the Democratic side won the nomination. I cannot hate when Pete Buttigieg speaks. That was pretty well done. And I gotta say, I really enjoyed that. And I understand he's like an Aaron Sorkin character come to life. I saw J.D. Durkin, a friend of mine from past Cheddar appearances, make that joke on Twitter. I totally get that. I mean, he's smarmy, but taking down Fox News' hypocrisy in this area was so just a breath of fresh air. And the entire appearance that he had on that show, they were trying to get him to call out Kamala Harris's hypocrisy over and over again until he finally snapped and was like, what about Mike Pence's hypocrisy? What about the hypocrisy of him working for Donald Trump, a man who's bragged about sexually assaulting women and has had multiple affairs with porn stars? I mean, it's just, the hypocrisy is so obvious, but it's never touched on by Fox, never touched on. And this had me revisit an old Atlantic piece about Mike Pence and his subservience to Donald Trump, despite Trump basically representing everything that evangelicals and religious people are supposed to hate. And it's just a fascinating read for multiple psychological and cultural reasons. Because God works in mysterious ways, or at the very least has a postmodern sense of humor, it was Donald J. Trump, gracer of Playboy covers, delighter of shock jocks, collector of mistresses, who descended from the mountaintop in the summer of 2016, GOP presidential nomination in hand, offering salvation to both Pence and the religious right. The question of whether they should wed themselves to such a man, by the way, that is a hilarious phrase by the author here, for Pence, was not without its theological considerations. But after 8 years of Barack Obama and a string of disorienting political defeats, conservative Christians were in retreat and out of options. So they placed their faith in Trump, and then, incredibly, he won. In Pence, Trump has found an obedient deputy whose willingness to suffer indignity and humiliation at the pleasure of the president appears boundless. Meanwhile, Pence's presence in the White House has been a boon for the religious right. Evangelical leaders across the country point to his record on abortion and religious freedom and liken him to a prophet restoring conservative Christianity to its rightful place at the center of American life. That is definitely creepy. Campaign operatives discovered that anytime Trump did something outrageous or embarrassing, they could count on Pence to clean it up. Even some of Trump's most devoted loyalists marveled at what Pence was willing to say. There was no talking point too preposterous, no fixed reality too plain to deny. If they needed Pence to defend the boss, he was in. And people close to Pence say he felt no conflict between his campaign duties and his religious beliefs. Mark Short, a longtime advisor to Pence and a fellow Christian, told me, the author of this Atlantic piece, that the vice president believed strongly in a scriptural concept evangelicals call servant leadership. The idea is rooted in the Gospels, where Jesus models humility by washing his disciples' feet and teaches, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave. All right, Mike Pence, whose feet does Trump wash? Huh? When has he modeled humility for this weird, oddly sexual sounding scenario that's playing out between you and Donald Trump of subservience? Has he ever been worthy of humility that you're showing to him and your blind fealty? I don't know. It doesn't seem that way. Like, Mike Pence is not that bright. this is not an intelligent way to operate as a human being. I don't begrudge anyone with religious beliefs, but blind subservience to somebody like this who's completely contradictory to everything you say you believe, that's pretty stupid. You're a sheep. And also, but what really this is all masking is evangelicals just care if Trump puts these conservative judges through. That's really what ties everything together for them. So they pretend it's all about like, oh, this biblical philosophy that connects us of washing the feet of Trump that are probably completely burnt orange from his spray tan. And the water just turns brown. They pretend it's about that, but it's about, no, we want abortion rights overturned, and Trump will rubber stamp these judges, and McConnell will do the same, and blah, 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 blah. And Mike Pence will be there to float whoever that is, and that's the connecting thread. But the hypocrisy is obvious, and back to Buttigieg. I'll take him as somebody who's going to hammer the Trump administration. His kind of quippiness, his verbose attitude, and pretentiousness in many areas, it works when it's on our side, and hammering Fox and Trump-Pence hypocrisy for sure.